Thank you again for joining and for being a part of ICD in many ways, be that those who are helped over the years on the board, whether active or previously on the board, the volunteers, and those who just shown up year after year. Of course, all of us here sitting these many years, it's no small thing. I feel like it's a real gift of a community for us to continue. I'm glad we were able, very grateful that we were able to find a new home back in Palm Springs after all of the disruptions of the last several years. Although it seems like we might be living in a period of constant disruption. Right? Again, sorry for the clumsy start here. It's like somehow it's always lined up where I was in the large room since we moved to Moselle. I've never been back in the smaller room. I'll attest for those who are on Zoom that we do have a nice spring breeze coming in the door this morning, so it's quite pleasant, and there's no musical production next door as yet. It's quiet and still in the room, so it's very nice. I retrieved the bell. What else have I done? I've achieved quite a lot in the last few minutes. I put the Dharma reminder and the Dharma ask into the chat, and a reminder for everyone here to the way we support the organization. Well, you know how. Many ways, energy, but also financially, that opportunity is here too. And I was pondering what to talk about today. Talks tend to be maybe more real and more pertinent if they're based on what's coming up for the person talking, right? It's like we can pick a topic in advance or have a subject, or you could pull out something on the Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths or any different aspect of practice, and one would hope with some training and study that you're able to say something useful about those teachings. But I've been really looking at for myself what is most important recently, and I think that has been heightened by the volatility and the challenge of our present environment. And how does the Dharma help? After all, we're in the helping business. We really are. We're in the helping business. We're in the Buddhism can be distilled down to its core, which is it is a way to reduce suffering that's inherent in the human condition. Just as simple as that. It's the Buddha in the ancient world, pre-science, was able to look into the reality of what it is to be a human being through living as one, and to contemplate reality and the way that we navigate and live in reality, and the many ways in which we distort and manipulate the world, and through our a collective misappraisal of the way things are, create the chaos and the difficulty in which we live. And that was true 2,500 years ago, and I'm sure we can agree that it's true now when we look into the world. There is much to be done in the realm of reducing suffering. In fact, the plate seems to be ever fuller. When I came to Zen practice and Buddhist practice, my goal was to realize enlightenment, right? That was the goal. It was not to become a Buddhist or a better person, of those things, right? It's like there's a me-centric goal of just like, well, I want to understand what these ancient Zen masters understood, and I wish to understand what the meaning of life is. These existential questions that can really stir us often in our lives. And Zen has been, I would say, instrumental has been a wonderful lens in order to look at the reality of being. Zazen, our meditation practice, is the direct way to experience our being, this awareness that we are. And through that inquiry and the discipline of doing it over and over again, there is the realization of deeper wisdom, and also the realization of our capacity for greater compassion. Those things are so, and meditation really serves to awaken that. It awakens something that is integral and core already to this nature that we are. It's not something extra that's created, but rather unlocking something which may sometimes have become throttled back or obscured by our the conditioned way in which we live in the world. There's many teachings in Zen, there's much more teachings in Buddhism, and we can enter from different ways. For myself, I've been looking, I was going to bring up today the 3 pure precepts, which I've brought up at other times too, but I think it's a wonderful, short, direct lens and system to be able to look at our lives and look at how we want to live in the world. I remember a good friend of mine practiced at the Zen Center for many years, and then they got married and they were leaving, and I spoke to their partner, and because their partner didn't practice Dharma, but it was, and I asked them about whether they had a practice or a spiritual practice, and they said no, but I like to live by life by a few core principles. And I'm like, oh, and I thought that's good. I'm like, what are they? And they said, well, I don't know really. And kind of let me think about that, And I always remember that because it sounded so good. I'm just like, yeah, a few core principles, but so they're not on here, are they? No, they're not. No, okay, that's good. So these 3 pure precepts are part of the precepts, for the guidelines for ethical conduct, living an upright life from the Buddhist tradition. They were created early in the Mahayana tradition of what Zen is a part of the Mahayana. So very, very old and very to the point. So without further ado, I'll read them. These are the 3 pure precepts. The first one, do not commit evil. The second, practice good. And the third one is do good for others. The first one, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of the language of that one. Do not commit evil. It's in the sense of that translation, because that's such a subjective term. People lay various claims to what's evil, and the goalposts move around with that claim, right? So I was looking up the word, which I like to do, look up a word and look up the etymology of a word and the meaning. Often I find in Zen, the second definition is usually more fitting than the first, curiously. And the word that I came with, the explanation, was harmfulness. Do not do harmfulness, committing harm. Do not commit harmfulness, right? And that's closer to the Sanskrit that's being translated. It has a root in ahimsa, right? The Sanskrit word ahimsa, which is, do the least harm possible, right? Which is the basis not only of Buddhism but also of Jainism, who've taken it to real lengths, right, to avoid any harm to insects, sweeping the ground in front of their feet. Do the least harm possible. Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism. So in this translation we could say refrain from harmfulness as a first step, as a first precept. And this is very key in Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism, it begins with a decision point, which is we realize self-centeredness is not a satisfactory life. Like, that's a key realization of the Buddhas and many others, and all of us. You realize the constant, you know, the me, I self can never be fully satisfied. Even, you know, and we know this well with, you know, no matter what kind of material gains or luxuries or how many things that you can gather in, there's something there that isn't reached by just acquiring more things. So this do not or refrain from harmfulness, this basis comes from the decision to live for the benefit or wanting benefit for all people. We could say that is the Bodhisattva vow. Mahayana brings in the concept and the practice of the Bodhisattva, someone who says, I wish to become more enlightened, more awakened, more present, more alive and here, and activate all of this potential, but I want that for everybody, everyone and everybody ultimately. And that includes everyone and everybody, which we find in our practice life can be a big ask. You know, because naturally we're quite used to, we're primates, we're used to living in small social groups that we're in a reasonably small social group right now, right? We function well within a group of kind of like-minded people. We form groups in this way, but we always have that difficulty in that here's this one small group over here, and then encountering this other small group over here. And then there's that sense of difference and othering that comes in. And that goes very deep for us as human beings. And we can see how that certainly just functions in the world now as it's always done. But if we begin with refraining from harmfulness or working for collective good, Dogen, who I think I just brought up at the very beginning, Zen teacher, said, commenting on this precept, he said, it is the dwelling place of all of the Buddha's Dharma and precepts. The very source of all of the Buddha's Dharma and precepts is refraining from harmfulness. Like the very basis. So I looked a little bit more into this ahimsa, derived from the Sanskrit to harm. So in Buddhism, ahimsa is considered the core virtue, promoting compassion and ethical living, encouraging mindful attention in daily life, fostering empathy, conflict resolution, and developing inner peace and equanimity. It extends to self-care as well as other care by avoiding harmful thought or action towards oneself or others. Quite a nice definition. Like all of our practice life, our life as a human being, can come from this source of wishing to avoid creating harm. Again, it is a practice life, because as human beings, I say this as somebody who I understand that I create harm often. Every day in some way, right? It's unavoidable that we create some harm. So I like the much more realistic approach of a Mahayana here that says, do the least harm possible. Right? Consciously endeavor to refrain from harm and do the least possible, knowing that our life comes at some expense to the world. And so we have the responsibility, perhaps, or the opportunity to tip the scales the other way in the balance, where we're bringing more to the world than we're taking from the world. So this first precept, refrain from harmfulness. The second one is to practice good. Seems quite straightforward. Dogen says, the Dharma of supreme, unsurpassed enlightenment. That sounds good. To practice good is the way of practice and of being practiced. And this is a really key line from Dogen here, where we talk about practicing good. Again, good can be very subjective. What we think is good for someone. Or when, we've been in that position when someone else knows what's good for you, with confidence, right? It's like, so good, again, just like evil, these are slippery concepts which are often misused and cause greater harm, no matter how well intentioned. Maybe this is why Dogen adds this clarifier. It is the way of practice and the way of being practiced. So the way of practice is literally the way that we meet life, that we decide to meet life. I always say in our meetings, meditation is the basis and the core of that. If we did nothing else, it would be very worthwhile showing up to sit, even if we just sat, snapped off half of a cookie, thank you whoever brought those, and then left without speaking. It would still have been a good investment of time to spend just the half hour in sitting. A very powerful way to maintain the precepts and practice good is to sit quietly and just to be present. To be present is to be mindfully aware of life, mindfully aware of our environment and what occupies, what fills our environment. And we see in the time that we sit together, just 30 minutes after the bell is struck at the end, there is a qualitative shift in the energy of the room in our meeting. Right? There is a palpable stillness and a sense of friendliness and connection, which just comes from sitting and sharing our common root, allowing the common root of awareness that we all are to recognize itself in everyone else. We realize we're family in that. This is like real, sangha practice. Then we practice good. Just to be present and mindfully aware is to practice good. And of course we can have if we have developed and know our core principles, just the way that we're operating in the world, lots of opportunity to practice the right way, or practice good, I would substitute or bring in what is the appropriate function. That's the good function. That's practicing good. What is appropriate to this experience now? That's what we align with when we sit. You become aligned with things as they are, and the appropriate response can move much more naturally as we stand up and open our mouths. It's like we've come into alignment with what's real. The alternative is to be, when we're much more asleep, we're kind of living in the narrative between our ears, running our own narrative, or often someone else's of a world's narrative, which we might think is ours, and there's that separation or misalignment from reality. Because that, reality can never be fixed into a narrative. It's chaotic and it's always unfolding. It's always new. The world is being reborn. It's always new every moment. But if we can meet it with eyes open, mind open, heart open, then that capacity to practice good, Dogen adds, is the way of practice, meeting things, doing things, but also, and very importantly, the way of being practiced. Right? So it's not just a matter of, well, this is all my responsibility to do good, and to, and everything running through the lens of me, I, and how I meet the world. A much more relaxed awareness practice is to really take refuge in presence. Take refuge in being alive and aware. Take refuge in meditation. And then the world lives you. You are being practiced. I remember this striking me very deeply at Yokoji. I was leading a sutra chanting service and hitting bells and chanting, and then I realized, I'm not chanting. But I was. There's words coming out, but it's just like I could stop and then just still the word, everything just still flows. Oh wow, I'm not doing this. I'm just getting out of the way and allowing service to take, the sutras to be chanted. In the same way with our breathing, you know, we say at the beginning of breath meditation, make the breath long and deep. But then once the bell's struck and you allow it to return to what it is, you're not breathing. You don't have to remember, right? I'll just think of being breathed, being practiced. Like the world is practicing us now. Right? Palm Springs is practicing us. The desert floor is practicing us. The mountains and the sky and spring breeze, we are being practiced made real by the world. So this is much more of an open gate, where there is the me, I, that is involved in things, and then there's the me, I can stand aside and let the world come through. That's the open gate that swings both ways. When it's just me, I, that's often a lonely and dissatisfactory experience. It's a big, difficult world for one person to live in. So we practice good. And then the third one is do good for others. So, you know, introduces some maybe subtlety here. So we're going to do good and then do good for others. Dogen adds the comment, transcending ordinary and transcending holy, liberate oneself and liberate others. So this is the practice of do good for others. Sometimes the language can feel a little abstract, but then, you know, he was writing this in about 1247 or something, so, you know, but liberate oneself and liberate others. But what is it to, you know, if we look at that, to do good, to orient our life, to be present, to be aware, to be conscious of refraining from harmfulness, which without the check on ourselves, without the decision point to avoid harm, then as a human being, you know, it tends to be much more a mix of good and bad. Right? We need. For myself, I need some core principles. Put it that way. Right. So, and then we're practicing good and being practiced by the world. But then now we enter into the space of how broad, how deep, and how wide is that sphere of activity? And what is it that we're calling other, after all? Self and other. You know, that for us as human beings, self and other are always clearly differentiated. Right? Well, not immediately when we're born, self and other are not differentiated for some period of time as we're right? And then, do you remember, I don't know, for those of us that children, you know, you can look back and remember when your kids develop the concept of mine. And that's the only word they say for a while. It's just like, mine, you know? It's like something that kind of comes in. When the world when something contracts, when there's a contraction and we realize self and other, mine and theirs, and just how much difficulty in the world comes from that right now. That sense of this is ours and that's not theirs. This is mine, this is not theirs. And yet that division of self and other is a construct of the human mind. I mean, clearly you're over there and I'm over here, so we can say, yeah, there is self and other. So it's not that self and other don't exist, but they are not clearly and utterly separated. We're different, we're the same. We're disconnected in one sense over there, but we're also deeply connected in another sense. You know, and as Dharma practitioners, then yeah, you know, the mind is broad. We can hold two things in our mind at the same time. Yeah, there is self and other. There's someone on the other side of a transaction. There's somebody on the other side of a relationship. But there's also not self and other. We are always connected, interconnected. And as we broaden our practice in that sense, it's very hard to really leave anybody on the outside. no matter how difficult that is. And believe me, there are people that I would leave outside the tent, right? But there has to be a way back into your tent eventually. Might be 1,000 years. But the realization that ultimately it's one world, one life, one Dharma, one way. No matter how distorted that becomes, always leads a path open to eventually return into harmony. But again, that can sound kind of cliche, and let's just like forgive everyone, and we all can hug it out, and it's not so simple in life. Some things, we're all tested in that way. But again, these to bring it back to these 3 core precepts. This is the basis of the Mahayana Buddhist approach. We can agree, let's avoid harm for this one and that one as much as possible. The world has too much harm. If we can orient ourselves to what's real and see what's actually going on, we can reduce that. We can improve things. And it starts, here and there. We can practice that. Even just a small, 1%, a little bit. Reduce the harm in the world. Practice good. Decide in this time that I am, in this experience that I'm having, we can make, not basing that decision, I should do good because if I don't, I'm going to get in trouble. There's going to be some consequence if I don't. But rather to do good because that's the best aspect of ourselves. The capacity to actually to want the best for everyone and everything. And then to make that real, not just conceptual. And that broadening sphere then that there's no limit to. There's good to do good for others. So, maybe I'd like to pause there and open it up for any question, any comment, anything that this is bringing up for you. And if you'd like to ask or share from your experience, that's also for those who are on Zoom too, please. You could raise hand if you'd like to ask or share a comment. Okay, that brought us to noon. Might take a minute to pass these out, but if we could pass some of these back, I think it's our tradition to close with the going forth metta dedication, and I put it in the chat for those on Zoom. So how we'll do this is I'll begin, and everybody join in. It's a really nice writing that Ian created here, and a fitting way, I think, to finish our meeting. Okay, I'm going to start. Going forth into this world, so need of light, may I bring all the kindness and wisdom I embody to each being and each situation that I meet. May the power of my practice today strengthen my resolve to be an agent of peace and justice in this world. Going forth together into this world, so need of light, together bring all the kindness and wisdom we embody to each being and each situation that we meet. May the power of our practice today strengthen our resolve to be agents of peace and justice in this world. We dedicate our practice for the liberation of all beings, the great, the small, the wise, the ignorant, the powerful and the powerless. May all beings be liberated from sorrow, loss, hatred and injustice, scarcity and want, and every form of suffering. May our practice today be a prayer for peace, and may it benefit all beings without exception. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. Thank you for joining online. I look forward to seeing you. Maybe Tuesday. I'm teaching on Tuesday or next Sunday. Anyway, please take good care of yourselves as you do others. Thank you. Thank you.